Hey there YouTube, Ruckin with Crew3 here, breaking down our top 10 picks for the Pioneer format for the most metal magic set ever, Kaldheim. Coming in at number 10 is the World Tree. This weirdly non-legendary land allows us to tap lands for any color as long as we control 6 or more lands. And for double Wooburg, we get to search our library for any number of god cards and put them onto the battlefield. The World Tree takes the number 10 spot because it allows color-hungry decks like Niv-to-Light the chance to play multiple spells in the mid to late game without having to worry about color requirements. The second ability isn't something to sleep on either. It's only a matter of time before we see enough gods be printed to hit an endgame's critical mass, or perhaps just even a combo deck utilizing changelings and cards like Maskwood Nexus. In at number 9 is Egon, God of Death, and the artifact side, Throne of Death. Egon is a 6/6 Death Toucher for 2 and a black, making her an aggressively costed creature in a similar vein to Rotting Regisaur. Has the steeper drawback of requiring you to exile 2 cards from your graveyard, or Egon is sacrificing you to draw a card. Wait, did I just say draw a card? That's right, Egon's downside is that she gets replaced by a fresh new card in your hand. She'd certainly be higher up on the list if her upkeep ability had a May clause in it, because as it stands you must exile 2 cards from your graveyard if you have them, meaning she doesn't play too nicely with recursive creatures in mono black, or the other graveyard decks relying on buying back Croxa as fast as possible. That being said, her throne side helps you turn your graveyard into new cards, while also slowly milling you. She might only be our number 9 for now, but if a certain Simic Giant ever gets removed from the format, I wouldn't be surprised to see Egon hitting the battlefield. Next, the number 8 seed is our first tribal card on the list, Elvish Warmaster. I mentioned in my Elves deck tech a few weeks ago that I would love to see a functional reprint of Dwinesley, or perhaps a Lord with an activated overrun type effect. Well, I'm happy to say Warmaster is both. For 1 and a green, we get a 2/2 Elf Warrior that says when 1 or more elves enter the battlefield, we get a 1/1 green Elf Warrior token. Now, of course, this ability is limited to only once a turn, but hey, turning our first elf on any turn into a Dwinesley is amazing. Now a late game Manador gives us 2 bodies. Shout of the Pack gets an extra elf, it's the first elf we play. It even triggers if we Coco on our opponent's turn. And while not as relevant, but still there, for 5 green, we give all of our elves +2/+2 and Death Touch on the turn. We get to turn all those extra bodies sideways and pile in the damage. This card is exactly what I was looking for and is going to help push elves up the Pioneer tier list. Our 7th pick is another tribal hit in the Mythic Quakebringer. This 5-mana giant is a Sulfuric Vortex, stapled to a stick bigger than even Teddy Roosevelt could carry. 5 mana might be a little slow to be cutting off early life gain from Uro or halting Creeping Chills and Oops All spells, but the damage she'll trigger from the graveyard is such a massive deal, all for the low cost of still controlling a giant. Unfortunately, the wording doesn't interact favorably with Mutavault, but it's still not going to be hard to keep ticking with all the variations of giant tribal deck lists I'm currently brewing up for the Pioneer format. Safe to say, Uro and Croxa aren't going to be the only giants to be worrying about in your opponent's graveyard for much longer. Number 6 is Bind the Monster. Situated just outside our top 5, Bind the Monster should not go under anyone's radar. This 1-mana enchantment gives all the budget-loving mono blue players a piece of removal that's better than a bounce effect or temporary tap down. The life loss is going to be negligible to the decks playing this in order to make sure they can permanently lock down creatures that can end the game for their opponents in short order. Also important to note, Bind also increases your blue devotion for anybody trying to work on their Master of Waves decks. Behold! Our number 5 pick, Behold the Multiverse. In the past, we've seen Glimmer of Genius and Chemist's Insight see some amount of Pioneer play, so it goes without saying that the new 4-mana draw 2 with upside will see play, especially where it can be cast for only 2 mana. Behold is such a good example of the power of Foretell. You can exile early to bluff a piece of interaction and cash in later for a chance to double spell, or just pay it out for retail. However you cast it, this card is gonna be good. At number 4, we have Valkyrie, God of Lies, and Tibalt, Cosmic Impostor. Valkyrie is a 2/1 for 2 that lets us look at our opponent's hand and exile a creature from it until Valkyrie leaves the battlefield. Then for X, you can choose a creature exile with Valkyrie with CMC X, and Valkyrie becomes a copy of that creature. Obviously our ceiling here is stealing an opponent's Uro, and then copying it next turn to give us our own Uro unless they can answer it, since Valkyrie gets around the sacrifice clause. And even when we don't hit the Holy Grail of Value Town, we can still disrupt our opponent's hand by taking an important creature on their curve, or even if they have no creatures, we still get relevant information on their hand to help us plan our future turns. Then, of course, if the game goes long, we have Tibalt, Cosmic Impostor, whose +2 exiles the top card of each player's library, -3s to exile an artifact or creature, and then ultimates at -8 to exile all graveyards and gives 3 red mana. Oh, and when Tibalt enters the battlefield, we get an emblem that lets us play any cards exiled with Tibalt, spending mana as though we're mana of any color, meaning we get to keep playing anything we exile using this devilish tricker's abilities, even after he leaves the board. Pick up your copies now because I expect this Imposter God to be an easy 2 of in any Rakdos strategy for the foreseeable future. Starting off our top 3, we have Goldspan Dragon. A big dumb 5-mana dragon, every set has them, right? Well, I can tell you Kaldheim is no different, except this one's really good, and it has to be in order to compete with the occasional format key player Glorybringer. And compete it does. Similarly statted with the same keywords, both Goldspan Dragon Both of these dragons provide the player with some form of advantage. With Glorybringer, it's going to deal 4 damage to any non-dragon an opponent controls, with the trade-off of it can attack next turn. Goldspan, however, gives us a mana advantage by not only providing a treasure every time it attacks or is targeted by a spell, but it also doubles the mana our treasure tokens provide, allowing us to power out more threats and spells as the game progresses, or perhaps more importantly, cashing in a newly created treasure from an opponent's removal spell to cast some form of protection to save our dragon. And it's not just opponent spells, it triggers for ours too, so maybe there's even a chunky feather deck out there somewhere creating as many treasures as possible. Finishing just out of our top slot is number 2 Blightstep Pathway and Searstep Pathway. Break out the bubbly because Rakdos finally has a good second dual land for aggressive shells. No more Canyon Slough or Foreboding Ruin, leading to awkward early tap lands, and we even get to cut down on Dragon Skull Summit. Blightstep is going to be a big boon for Rakdos decks just outside the top contenders of the format, and give more reason to explore the color combo in the format. Fingers crossed it gets its friend Blackcleave Cliff soon. Finally, our number 1 card for Pioneer, Doomscar. Right now, the control decks in Pioneer have a hard time containing the red decks. There's not much Verdict can do when they're representing lethal and burn spells after you tap out on 4. But what if we can take a turn off where instead of cycling an Azorius Charm or playing an Opt, we get to put a Wrath on layaway and untap to blow up the board on that crucial turn 3. Doomscar doesn't just skew the control magic mind game in your favor, it places the ball squarely in your court. Hear me out. Aggressive decks are built around the notion they have until turn 4 before a Wrath, and only have to deal with maybe one piece of light interaction or a counterspell before that. But now, they have to knowingly progress their board into a Wrath on turn 2 or 3, because if they don't, they lose any forward momentum they currently have. And they can't play around the Doomscar because what if it isn't a Wrath, is instead just behold the multiverse? Well, now their whole game plan is off and you just get a free turn to set up. Doomscar is hands down our number 1 pick for Pioneer, and will help throw control decks back into the metagame mix. Once again, this has been Ruckman with Crew3. If you enjoyed this video, please be sure to like, comment, subscribe, and hit the little bell icon to know when new videos go live. You can find our weekly podcast on all major platforms, alongside weekly deck techs here on YouTube, or stream multiple nights a week at Crew3 MTG on Twitch. Finally, thank you to all of our wonderful supporters at Patreon. If you'd like to see your name at the end of all of our videos and streams, as well as receiving other benefits, head on over to patreon.com/Crew3MTG. I'll talk to y'all next week. Bye!